There was no slow start. There was no soft tone. The words came fast, and they carried heat. They carried pressure. They carried a level of anger that could not be hidden or softened. Ibrahim Traoré spoke with a force that showed he had reached his limit. His voice carried the weight of frustration that had been building for a long time. He made it clear that he was done watching in silence. He made it clear that the case of Nnamdi Kanu was no longer something anyone could ignore. He said the recent life imprisonment sentence had crossed a line. He said the judgment had shocked many people. He said leadership should not allow a sentence that deepens division. He said power is not shown by placing a man under punishment that destroys national calm. His words were sharp, and they hit hard. They did not shake. They did not bend. They did not come with excuses or gentle pauses. He said a leader must show courage through decisions, not through punishment that increases anger. He said harsh sentences create more doubt. He said doubt slowly becomes resentment, and resentment turns into unrest. He said this path was dangerous, and everyone could see it. He said people across Africa were watching how this case was handled. He said the world had seen too many moments where justice was pushed to extremes. He said this must not become another example of a system that ignores the voices of the people. His tone carried disappointment, but it also carried a warning. A warning that could not be mistaken. A warning that did not need extra words. He said a man cannot be sentenced to life while leaders pretend the matter is resolved. He said real resolution is shown through healing, not through a sentence that closes the door on peace. He said even those who disagreed could see that the situation had passed the line of reason. The message grew stronger with every sentence. It grew heavier. It grew louder. Not because he shouted, but because the truth inside it was undeniable. He said a nation cannot call for unity while enforcing a punishment that tears people apart. He said unity must be built, not demanded. He said unity cannot exist when anger remains unaddressed. He said the life sentence had made many people feel ignored. He said feeling ignored creates bitterness. He said bitterness spreads faster than calm. He said no leader should allow that to happen. He said the case had become a symbol of distrust, a symbol of power without compassion, a symbol that was damaging the idea of national strength. He said true strength is shown by ending a conflict, not by locking it in place forever. He said true stability comes from closure, not from a sentence that keeps a wound open. He said true leadership means knowing when to stop a fire before it becomes larger. His words carried a sense of urgency. He did not speak as someone making a suggestion. He spoke as someone stating a truth that had already matured. He said time had run out for silence. He said silence only protects fear. He said fear had no place in leadership. He said leaders must face hard decisions and make them. He said avoiding a decision is still a decision, but a weak one. He said weakness is the fastest path to loss of trust. Every sentence pressed harder than the last. Every line pushed the tension higher. Every word reminded people that this was no longer a quiet matter. He said the people were restless. He said the streets carried frustration that could not be dismissed. He said the public was tired of seeing a life sentence become a national burden. He said the longer the sentence stood without action, the more the nation drifted. He said drifting nations fall into deeper problems. He said leadership must act before that point comes. He said the case of Nnamdi Kanu had become a test of courage, a test of fairness, a test of responsibility. He said leaders who fail such tests lose moral ground. He said moral ground cannot be recovered once it collapses. He said this was the moment to prevent that fall. Then the pressure shifted. The air around the conversation changed. People felt what his words meant. People understood the weight behind them. That was the moment everything turned serious. That was the moment the message could not be dismissed. That was the moment the tension became undeniable. The anger was not wild. It was controlled. It was deliberate. It was aimed with purpose. And with that, the stage for confrontation was set. The pressure was alive. The challenge was forming. The story was no longer quiet. The spark had been lit, and nothing would be the same after that. Traoré called Tinubu out by name. No pause. No hesitation. His tone did not shake. His message did not soften. He spoke with full intent, and every word carried weight. He said a president must lead with bold actions, not slow steps. He said leadership is measured by decisions, not speeches. He said nations do not move forward when leaders avoid the hardest choices. He said unity cannot grow while anger remains. He said peace cannot stand while doubt spreads. He said trust cannot return while the public feels unheard. Then he pressed further. He did not step back. He did not reduce the pressure. He told Tinubu to activate a presidential pardon. Not later. Not after long talks. But now, in the present moment, without delay. He said a pardon would calm the nation. He said a pardon would break the rising tension. He said a pardon would show that leadership understands timing. He said delay only feeds frustration. He said frustration grows into distrust. He said distrust becomes a force that no leader can control. His words were direct and measured. They carried firmness, not chaos. They carried authority, not aggression. He said a leader must sense when a situation has reached its limit. He said the case of Nnamdi Kanu had reached that limit. He said holding on any longer would be a mistake. He said this was not about politics. He said this was not about pride. He said this was about national stability and the future of peace. He said a strong leader knows when to close a chapter. He said a strong leader knows when a nation is tired. He said a strong leader knows when continued force becomes weakness. Then he sharpened the tone again. He said the country could not afford more division. He said the people could not continue living with rising tension. He said the government could not pretend the matter was invisible. He said ignoring public emotion never ends well. He said silence toward rising anger is dangerous. He said leadership must act before pressure becomes irreversible. The message sounded like a challenge. It carried the energy of confrontation. It felt like a demand wrapped in truth. He said Tinubu had the power to end the issue. He said presidents are given authority for moments like this. He said refusing to act would show fear, not control. He said courage is proven through decisions that reduce conflict. He said a pardon would not show weakness, but maturity. He said maturity in leadership is rare, and history remembers it. Then he turned to the deeper meaning. He said Africa is changing. He said people are no longer silent. He said leaders must adjust or fall behind the new era. He said a new generation is watching every move. He said they judge leaders by fairness, not force. He said they reject oppression disguised as order. He said granting a pardon would mark a new direction. He said it would show that power can be used to heal. He said it would prove that the government values peace more than pride. He said failure to act would only enlarge the divide. He said waiting would add more fuel to anger. He said anger, once grown, is hard to pull back. His tone did not change, and his stand did not shift. He spoke as someone who understood the scale of the moment. He spoke as someone who saw the consequences clearly. He said Tinubu must choose between easing tension or letting it rise. He said the choice would shape how the nation remembers him. He said history does not forget leaders who avoid responsibility. He said presidents are defined by the decisions they make in heavy moments. He said this was one of those moments. He said pretending otherwise would be dishonest. He said no leader should ignore a problem that grows every day. He said ignoring reality only works until reality arrives at the door. He said that time had already come. Then the words spread across conversations. People repeated them. People felt the weight in them. People began to question what Tinubu would do next. The pressure was no longer silent. The question was now public. The expectation was set. Traoré had spoken, and he had spoken without fear. His message stood firm. A pardon was not a suggestion. It was the solution. It was the test. It was the demand placed before the president. Traoré closed with a strong strike. He said Africa is entering a new era. He said leaders must rise or be left behind. He said a nation must listen to its people. He said a leader must prevent unrest before it begins. He said delaying action only makes the fire grow. He said the future belongs to leaders who act, not those who delay. He said strength is proven through choices that protect peace. He said refusing to act only invites trouble that could have been avoided. He said every nation reaches a moment where hesitation becomes dangerous. He said Nigeria was standing at that moment right now. He said the case of Nnamdi Kanu had become that moment of truth. He said ignoring pressure does not make pressure disappear. He said avoiding responsibility does not remove responsibility. He said silence does not calm a nation that is already on edge. He said leadership must not wait for anger to explode. He said leadership must step in before frustration becomes a force. He said a wise leader sees warning signs and responds early. He said a pardon would cool the temperature of the nation. He said it would reduce tension before it spreads further. He said it would show that leadership cares about stability. He said a leader who listens gains respect. He said a leader who refuses to listen loses loyalty. He said loyalty lost is hard to win back. He said history records moments like this. He said history separates leaders who act from leaders who hide. He said history never forgets those who choose calm over conflict. He said Africa is watching how the matter unfolds. He said young people are watching more closely than ever. He said the new generation demands fairness, not fear. He said the old political style is fading. He said intimidation has lost its power. He said the future belongs to transparency, not suppression. He said a nation cannot grow while carrying unresolved tensions. He said development cannot thrive while distrust spreads. He said no government can ask for unity while ignoring the people's demands. He said releasing Nnamdi Kanu through a presidential pardon would send a message. He said the message would show maturity. He said it would show leadership guided by wisdom. He said the world measures leadership through how conflicts are resolved. He said force is not resolution. He said endless detention is not resolution. He said true leadership finds the end of a dispute. He said true leadership closes wounds. He said true leadership protects the peace before peace breaks. Then the words spread fast. People reacted. People watched for Tinubu's move. He said leadership is not about waiting for pressure to explode. He said leadership is about acting before the damage appears. He said a leader who acts early prevents a storm. He said ignoring this moment would be a mistake. He said the mistake would grow with time. He said time would not hide the consequences. He said the nation was paying attention. He said the world was paying attention. He said Tinubu must understand that attention brings accountability. He said nothing good comes from pushing a nation to the edge. He said no leader benefits when the public loses patience. He said stability is worth more than pride. He said a single decision could calm the people. He said a single signature could ease the tension. He said a single act could restore balance. He said the choice belonged to Tinubu alone. He said no one else could make that decision. He said the weight rested on the office of the president. He said leadership is shown in moments exactly like this. He said the right move would strengthen the nation. He said the wrong move would deepen the divide. He said this was not a time for excuses. He said this was not a time for delay. He said this was the time for action. He said a nation becomes restless when hope fades. He said hope fades when leaders refuse to respond. He said the public cannot wait forever for a sign of direction. He said peace must be protected through clear decisions. He said confusion never protects peace. He said uncertainty weakens the fabric of society. He said Nigeria stands at a doorway. He said one path leads to calm. He said the other path leads to rising frustration. He said it was better to choose calm now than to try to repair chaos later. He said damage is easier to stop than to fix. He said leaders must understand the value of timing. He said the country needed closure. He said the region needed calm. He said the people needed proof that leadership understands them. He said leadership cannot demand loyalty while ignoring emotion. He said loyalty grows when people feel seen. He said no nation thrives when its citizens feel unheard. He said the decision would echo beyond politics. He said it would touch identity. He said it would shape how people feel about their country. He said Nigeria could send a message of maturity. He said Nigeria could show strength through reconciliation. He said Nigeria could step into a new chapter with confidence. He said the world is watching for decisions that lower tension. He said Africa is watching for leaders who heal wounds. He said the future is watching for those who choose unity. He said leadership must not fear the people. He said leadership must earn the people. He said respect is stronger than force. He said a pardon would not erase the past. He said it would open the door to the future. He said it would mark a turning point that generations would remember. He said a leader gains honor when he ends pain, not when he prolongs it. He said nations grow when wounds are closed, not when they are kept open. He said this was the time to close a wound that had lasted too long. Will the pardon happen? Will the tension grow? Will this message force change? Nothing is certain yet. But one truth stands firm: a single decision can calm a nation, or shake it even more.